not worth waiting for a correction. It will come at some point. I don't think yet. And it's better to have the metal because it's not just a matter of getting it at a cheap price. If you don't have metals instead of money in the bank, then you're part of a system that might not survive in its present form.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new year 2026. Egon, I'm glad to see you again. The market is roaring. New highs for gold and silver almost every day. My goodness, what is your assessment right now? Is the market overheated?
Jan, I have in recent weeks, or probably for 7-8 weeks, I've been talking about that this is not the normal market. We're going away from a futures market that can be manipulated. We're going to a physical market, especially in silver, where there are massive shortages, and the outstanding contracts can never be fulfilled with the physical, and therefore it's a different market. And on silver, I expected, and I've been saying that when the market went through 50, we go quickly to 60, 70, 80, 90. And 100 might take a few days or whatever to go through, but I think we will continue. The normal overbought, oversold is not valid now. This is a physical market with massive fundamental shortages. And therefore, we're not going to see the normal technical tools working here with overbought, oversold.
It is a complete revaluation of the precious metals, but we come to this in a moment. We are close to 100 with silver and close to 5,000 with gold. And
Yes.
As we expected, the gold-silver ratio dropped massively. Let me show the graphic. Here we have it over a very long period, and look what happened here. We can also take a shorter period. It's falling off the cliff, which means that silver appreciates much faster than gold, as you predicted also, Egon. And I can only say, what a market, and it's far from over. And look what I found here on X, and I think this is a pretty good comment on the current situation. Global Markets Investor is writing, what's happening here? He's showing the charts. What exactly are precious metals pricing in? Fiat currency collapse, a geopolitical event. He is asking the right questions, and I think one or both of those could be in the cards. What's your opinion?
Jan, this is a fundamental and permanent repricing of the precious metals, and especially silver, where there are massive shortages in the physical market. Industrial use has gone from 10% to 50% and over 50 in the last 5 years. And also in the last 5 years, there has been a deficit between demand and supply every year. So there's a permanent physical deficit annually that is made up in futures and lending, etc., market, silver, and that's untenable. On top of that, on the London market, in the LBMA market, there are outstanding contracts in the hundreds of billions that can never be met. These are paper contracts promising to deliver silver. They cannot deliver. We are not going to see silver reversing here, nor gold for that matter, but especially silver. It's going to go up further. Of course, there'll be corrections at some point, and some of them will be vicious. We are not ready, in my view, for corrections yet in silver. It's got a long way to go.
I agree, Egon, and something in the financial system stinks. And if something is in the cards, the masters behind the curtain, they continue to push for central bank digital currencies. And there is currently an important event in Switzerland, where you are based, taking place. And again, they bring the same wish to the audience. BlackRock CEO Fink tells the World Economic Forum the world must move faster toward digitalized currencies under a single unified blockchain to reduce corruption. Okay, reduce corruption, that's to me a joke. You said it already in the past. Central bank digital currencies doomed to fail. Another very good argument to own right now precious metals, at least in my opinion.
Well, Fink is a globalist, and the World Economic Forum in Davos, which you mentioned, is also a globalist event. When the big guys who still have a lot of power because all of their paper assets are up in the sky, with the stock markets near the highs, and still bond markets have a value which they won't in the next few years, in my view, because I think the bonds will collapse, interest rates will go up into the sky. And the same with property markets, which is now have major problems in most countries when it comes to the financing. There will be massive amounts of bad debts, and there are bad debts already. There'll be failures in the property market also, and now even in China, there's a big problem even there. We're talking about the globalists having a little bit of power for maybe another year maximum or so. But once stock markets turn, and I think that's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 quarters, then all of a sudden that massive bubble, massive bubble assets, paper assets, will start declining rapidly. And as you know, I've always said I expect these paper assets to come down by, let's say, 90% at least against gold and silver. This is the shift we're going to see. That's what the investor should focus on, not on what the elite does in Davos, etc. Because digital currencies, in my view, is not a solution. It's just a way of manipulating markets, and it is nothing to do with real money. It's just a way to keep on printing money, which will have no value. So therefore, it will only, if it happens, will only be a temporary phase. And certainly not permanent. And the same with cryptocurrencies. It's not the solution at all. So we'll see a failure in the next few years. I'm expecting it to start soon. And sadly, when you were talking about debts of the magnitude that we are looking at around the world, there is not a solution. At some point, there will be an implosion of debt and an implosion of the assets that these debts support. And that's what I expect in the next 5, maximum 10 years.
So we rather stick with gold and silver, although there are some voices that warn. I mentioned that already at the beginning. I'd like to show you here one of those articles who say a big correction is ahead. I don't think so, for the reasons that we discussed already. Silver is over 100% above the 200 days moving average, etc. They write here silver is under massive upward pressure at the start of the year, gaining almost a third in January alone. The precious metal is now trading more than 100% above the 200-day moving average, according to Bank of America, as overbought as it has been since 1980. Analysts warn that such extreme deviations are rarely sustainable. On the other hand, I found another good article here on Börse Online, and they mention a poll by the LBMA, and that, interestingly, is pretty positive for the precious metals. Many experts now view gold in particular not only as a hedge, but as a structural beneficiary of geopolitical tensions, high government debt, as you just said it, and monetary policy uncertainty. For 26, Egon, the experts here that were asked expect up to $6,000 for gold and 160 for silver, but my opinion is it doesn't matter too much. You have to have the metals. The price targets, at least to me, play no role. What counts are the ounces.
Absolutely, Jan. What's happening here and what you were describing is we are at the end of a monetary era. And this has happened every 100 to 200 years maximum in history. So the currency goes to zero. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing the total debasement of currencies that, as I said, always happens. No currencies ever survived in history. The only money that has survived in history, the only real money, the nature's money, is gold and silver sometimes. So therefore, we have all the leaders, we have all the events to make this happen. We have the worst leaders that we've seen for a very long time historically. But they are there to actually make it all happen. to actually, so that we can go down to this zero value of currencies and high inflation and the implosion of debt, implosion of assets. We're going to see that. People will say he's crazy. Well, maybe I am crazy, but just study history and you will see it happens time and time again. And the way it is now escalating, and the exponential moves we're now seeing in gold and silver, that, remember, that is on the other side is exponential moves down of the currencies. And so the purchasing power of the currencies are continuing to decline, and now rapidly. So we are coming to the end of this. And that's why, of course, as you said, people have to own the metals. It's the currency is not going to help you, or whatever currency you hold. You've got to hold physical metals and gold and silver outside the banking system. That's the only way to protect yourself here.
Another important factor to support the precious metals prices is Trump, of course, Egon. 2 weeks ago or so, he announced that he would increase the military budget by 50%. 500 billion more per year, and I just calculated that the 3,000 tons of gold production annually is roughly a value of $432 billion. So Trump, by mouse click money, is creating more money or more debt than the whole value of the annual gold production. And then he is going to appoint a Fed chair soon that will certainly do what he wants, which means lowering the interest rates while the inflation is still high. And the division in the world continues, i.e., de-dollarization is continuing, weakening the dollar. So what else arguments do you need to own precious metals?
No, exactly. And if I can just comment on, the arming or rearming of the whole world now. So increasing 50% the US defense budget, or is actually very much of an attack budget. It's not a defense budget because they keep on attacking countries around the world. And, they're all already, the US budget is already bigger than all nations in the world put together. US is building up this military complex, and of course that's wonderful because it brings a lot more money into Trump's coffers also, because he get the military complex gives great support to political parties and leaders. Trump more or less forced Europe to also take their budgets up to 5% of GDP in defense spending, which is also crazy. They're all arming up to their teeth. That no European country has the money to do that. So that is it's a ridiculous move. And why I ask, don't instead you spend money on trying to make peace instead of making arms and building up the military everywhere in the world? It's a disaster for the world. It takes us much nearer to, if not Armageddon, so the risk of nuclear war or major wars, this total rearming of the world. Again, precious metals is the only way that, as you said, with the debasement of the dollar, and new Fed head is obviously going to listen to Trump because he'll be chosen by Trump, so therefore he will take interest rates up temporarily. Interest rates down temporarily, possibly. But that's not going to last. The trend of interest rates are up and strongly up because inflation is up, and that's what the metals are showing. That's what the currencies are showing, and therefore we are not going to see lower interest rates. In my view, we're going to see interest rates in the teens in the next year or two. It'll appear like the 70s, even worse perhaps. He's going to fail Trump totally with his new Fed head, because even if they try to put short rates down, long rates are going to go up regardless of short rates, because that's what the market determines, and they will pull the short rates up. So, we'll have higher interest rates, lower dollar, high inflation. This is just like in the 70s.
That's right, Egon. And I have the fear that a big war could come. And you know what politicians do when they are forced into the corner? They take crazy to insane decisions. And unfortunately, I expect the worst. Therefore, we prepare. And another point which speaks for gold today is that central banks continue to buy. And one central bank that bought much gold in the past years was Poland. Amazingly, because they were not big buyers in the past, but they became a big buyer. It seems that the price doesn't matter anymore. You have to have it, which again speaks for the revaluation, the general revaluation and geopolitical tensions, de-dollarizations. We mentioned it already. That's not going to improve. The opposite, I think, the division between East, Russia, China, BRICS, and the West, Trump, and the indebted nations, that will get worse. So it also speaks for precious metals.
Yes, as you say, central banks are buying gold. Now, Western central banks are not buying gold, haven't bought anything, with the exception of Poland. But otherwise, all the Eastern central banks are continuing to buy gold in big amounts, and China probably has a lot more gold than they are declaring officially. Russia buys gold. The Chinese gold, for example, that they produce stays in China, and now they have also stopped exporting silver to China, so they're keeping their own silver that they produce also. And of course, they are the biggest producer of gold in the world, and a major producer of silver. So and then of course, BRICS countries are also buying gold everywhere in the world. People see that, governments see it, especially non-Western governments, and now the market sees it. Sadly, the market waited for gold to go to $5,000 before they start to become really interested. And we have been buying gold heavily since $300. But still, markets are catching up. The public is catching up. We're seeing major inflows, to our company for people who now want wealth protection in the form of physical precious metals and gold outside the banking system. And silver there are shortages, very hard. We can still get hold of silver, and we can get hold of silver at the normal price, not at inflated prices. They're quoting prices of $100, $110 in several places in the East, and even in Australia. But we can still get hold of it at the current prices. But there are major shortages of silver, and it's very hard to get hold of, and a lot of retail shops, etc., don't have silver anymore. There will be bigger shortages, but that's why it's still possible to get hold of it. But people shouldn't wait, because I think at some point there will be problems in the London market, the silver market there, the LBMA physical silver market, because of the outstanding paper commitments that they have, and the same that Comex also. So therefore, that there will be a point when there will be no silver available at all. Gold is not there yet, but it can easily reach that point also in the next few months or 6 months or whatever. Get your physical now, silver and gold, and keep it outside a fragile banking system. That's the advice we give to our listeners and investors, Jan.
That's a good advice, Egon. And my final point for today is the bond market. Look at Japan, the yields there, they are increasing, and we have to go decades back to see a yen to dollar price as low as now, but it could devalue further. The yields are rising, so the people are avoiding fleeing the Japanese bond market. And imagine if something similar, I think Denmark did it already, because the Greenland insanity, if big players start to sell US bonds. When panic first. I think we haven't seen much yet in the precious metals prices.
Absolutely. It's not too late yet, because I expect the metals to go up by multiples, but they will go up by multiples partly because there will be virtually no physical supply. So this is why I get it now when you still can, because the move has been massive, and therefore people think, should I wait for a correction? It's not worth waiting for a correction. It will come at some point. I don't think yet. And it's better to have the metal, because it's not just a matter of getting it at a cheap price. If you don't have metals instead of money in the bank, then you're part of a system that might not survive in its present form. So it's much better to have it outside the system, under your own control, And that way, you're holding real physical wealth. And that's the only thing that will count now in order to preserve your wealth in coming years.
Exactly, Egon. That was the final statement. I thank you for the interview today. And as a Swiss friend corrected me last time, not grüezi, but auf Wiederluge.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Till next time. Egon.
Wiederluge.
Wiederluge.